Hi everyone, it's been a long time since my last video. I've been meaning to make a video on slabs for a while and I've been a bit busy, but here I am. I just wanted to show you what can be made with slabs and maybe a brief demonstration of some ways of making slabs. There are already other videos of me making slabs in a box making video and a big moon lunar video, but I'll try and put all of that knowledge in this one video. So this is actually a terracotta slab plate that I made a while ago, and this one, as you can see, a little bit of texture. I'm not sure you can see. So this is actually quite flat. It's not wobbling. So this has been made using a round beating tool, which is actually part of an ongi tool set. But I used that to make this quite a relatively thin slab. I'll say about 0.4 centimeters. So the tip I learned from another maker is that he was using the same tool, and he beats both sides of the slab so they don't warp. So I thought I'll give it a go, and the result was, as he mentioned, it's not warped. His slabs were even thinner and even bigger and very flat. But I thought this was as thin as I could go. But yes, so his technique works. And these are just a few examples that I've made, but I'm sure other people can come up with many more slab work they can think of. So this is a similar one, same technique. This is much thicker. It's actually built as a wall piece to be hung. This was actually the sample for the bigger moon pieces, which were about 50 centimeters diameter. So this was the same technique I used, beating both sides, and I've made imprints on it. And this is a box that people have already seen. And this one is actually, I don't know what I was thinking. I just wanted to make something with slabs, and it's actually quite thick slabs. They're about 0.5 centimeter thick, and yeah, so I just connected many different slabs so it's not one big slab. So if you see, this is one slab here, and then there's another piece, and there's another slab here that I connected to this. So I built it from the bottom up, obviously. So this is like another slab, and then there's one connection, there's one slab here. So I was just having fun with slabs, and these bits here I've added on afterward. These are transfers because the piece looked a little bit bare with the beige satin color. So I thought I just wanted to jazz it up and use some transfers. And this is 2 big slabs joined together as a thin vase. This is actually terracotta. So that's one example. And this one, I don't know where I was going with this. I just wanted to use terracotta. And this was actually it was very, very wet, one long, about this thick slab. So I rolled it up on a thick cylinder. I think it was a paper thick cylinder, and I rolled it on basically like this, like a spring, I guess, but a very thick spring, and tried to smooth out this connecting bits from the inside. So that was another slab. And this is one of my flat vases. These are, so the only slab bits are actually the body here. It was 2 big plate slabs that I've connected. and this is same technique as the flat vase. So it's two slabs joined together. So if you see, two slabs joined together to make this mountain. So I guess, you know, many designs can be derived from using slabs, but it is a nice way of starting out from something flat, and then you can always build it up to make the design you desire. So let me go and show you a few different tools as well as a small demonstration. So these are some of the tools to make slabs. So this was the tool I was talking to you about that is part of an ongi tool set. This is actually called toge, which is held like this inside the pot to be beaten. But I use this as a horizontal beating tool. It's wet because it's actually pulled out from the toolbox, which is in water. And as many people recognize, these are the gauges to roll slabs, which I personally do not use, but I thought I'll show you anyway because it's very, very common. So the gauges are basically to determine the thickness. So you are hoping to get this thin slab. This is the thickness of the slab you're aiming for. And obviously a rolling pin, which you need to use with these slab gauges. So the idea is to roll it to this thickness level, and once nothing catches, you often roll it from the middle out and then middle down. But I find this, I'm not sure, I guess it's a habit thing. I have been taught to make slabs like this initially, but I never liked, I just felt it was a little bit maybe too controlled. I think that's the only reason I can think of that I wasn't really taken to this rolling technique. And a good tip is, if you are using a rolling pin, is to roll it on a piece of cloth, so it will be easy to take off the slab, especially when it's very thin. It's very, very helpful. I'm not going to demonstrate this because it's not my main way of making a slab, and it's already a very known it's a known technique for slab making. And of course, if you have a slab roller, then it's all good. You don't need all these hand tools to make your slab. I do use the rolling pin every so often after using my beating technique, and there are bits that I haven't ironed out, or I just want to roll it just more locally, never to roll out an entire slab with a rolling pin. And the other technique that I often use is the I don't know how to say it. It's slamming down on a surface, I guess. I might demonstrate that briefly here with this one. So this is something I learned when I went to see Hyung-jong at his studio in Korea many years ago. And he makes his ongi using the slab technique, which is quite a rare one. And he starts with a bigger lump to make much, much bigger slab. And I have to say, this way I don't always get it very even. So when it's not even in certain sections, I will use a rolling pin to make it a little bit more even. So the technique of slamming and slab making would be to go up and down, up and down, up and down. And you actually, at this stage, you want the clay to be relatively hard, so not too soft, otherwise it will just tear and stick to surface and you won't be able to get the slab out of the surface. Oops. I still haven't mastered this, so I start off with this way of trying to just extend the clay, and then I go back to using this tool to actually make it to the very fine thickness that I want. Just often, like at this stage, I want to make it, I'm gonna definitely make it thinner. I put it on a board, and this is when I use this tool to kind of hit it down. And also it's better, you can, this is quite thick, so at this thickness is about 1 centimeter, you can just flip it. Generally, it's a good idea to put 2 boards together between a slab and then turn it if you want to turn it. Oh, maybe that was a bit wet, actually. It's a little wet, so I had to peel it. So it's intuitive, but sometimes it isn't, but it's always better if you come from the center out as the clay pushes out as it thins. Good to change boards because it absorbs water and it sticks. Like even here. Because this is stoneware, it should be okay to be managed. manhandle a little bit. Yes, so ideally with this beating technique, if you've turned twice, you want to have each side to have the same number of beatings, so it's evened out in its compression to make sure it does not crack. And all my slab work using this technique, I have never had any of the slab crack at any thickness. I think the thinnest I've gone with slabs were about 0.4, the terracotta plate you saw, and maybe just a touch more thinner, but I've not had any trouble the slabs cracking at any size. So I guess the also important thing for if it's very thin is so let's say I am going to be drawing on this board. Because it's a big surface, you want to have, so people I think sometimes drawing on cloth, that I have not tried. If it's a big, if it covers a large surface, then I would have silica sand, and I spread a very thin layer of it. And I think this is stuck. So I would have this slab on the board with the silica sand on it. Oh, all this, I think the clay has been a bit wet. Ooh. So this is just for the purpose of the demonstration. So you would ideally want to have a thin layer of silica sand, so when it dries, it's not going to stick to, so you can see how wet it is, because this was also very wet clay. So when it dries and shrinks, it will not be stuck to the surface, and with that tension, potentially the slab can crack. So this way, the slab has a little bit of a gap between the board and the slab itself. Because of the silica sand, it will have a little bit of room for it to move as it dries. And this principle is applied exactly the same when you are loading the kiln. For this piece, for instance, I would lay even at bisque and glaze firing, I'll have a thin layer of silica sand when I'm firing. So again, when it shrinks in the kiln during its firing, it will have a little bit of a movable surface, so that can again prevent it from cracking. So this was a very rough demonstration, but I wanted to show you my main way of making a slab, which was used in all of my slab making work. I think flat vase, big moon, as well as making boxes. So you can give it a go. It doesn't have to be exactly the tool like this, but anything, I think a wooden tool is good. And a tip is to keep it slightly damp so it doesn't stick completely to the clay. Is always helpful. I haven't used any other material tool, but you could, I guess, give it a go. I think a metal tool might be too sticky. And also another nice thing is if you have patterns on your wooden tool, you could imprint it as you make the slab. That's another idea for a patterned slab if you're interested in making so. So one very important thing, it goes with all clay work, but with slabs you want to make sure you know when to catch, so when to know to use the slab for the purpose of your making. So for instance, this is actually still very wet. I cannot use this for box making, for instance. The box one, you want the clay to be not quite leather hard, but just before leather hard. So when you cut out a piece of square or any piece for you to join, it has to stand on its own and not be floppy. Otherwise, the whole box making will be very, very difficult, and the form will be distorted very easily. So for instance, a spiral tap, the big spiral vase you saw in terracotta earlier on, that was very, very wet. I think it was even wetter, maybe around this sort of wetness, so that I could roll it over a structure and mold it on the structure. So it's knowing when to, how dry, how wet the clay to be. It's just, you could trial and error, but there are, obvious things like, if you want to make rigid structures, you want to make sure your clay is a bit dry, and if you want to make a more smoother, more twisted, more shaped, you want to catch a slab when it's a bit wet. And one of the most important thing in terms of preventing any flat work from cracking is to cover dry, basically drying it very, very slowly, so you don't have tension between the edge and the middle bit, middle being wet and the edge being too dry too quickly. So if it's a big piece like the moon I've made in the past, I think on the edges of the moon I covered it with plastic so it doesn't dry too quickly whilst the middle bit is drying. So it goes the same with if you're making plates. You want to ensure that it dries slowly, so you cover dry it over 2 weeks or so. I think the moon I was drying it over a month, so that it dries very, very slowly. For tiles, these are actually plasterboards that I picked up in front of the studio. It was all in the bin. I thought I'd bring it in and cut it to a size that I need. So these are plasterboards, and for tiles which you want to be very, very flat, it's good idea to dry it on a plasterboard, because it will kind of dry quite evenly. So you would sandwich the slab and dry it on these plasterboards. And also every so often, if there are many, this is a bit small one, if there are many tiles, that you want to swap the edge ones into the middle so they kind of all have an even drying time. So this was a tip I learned from a short lesson I went to learn how to make bathroom tiles. So if you find some plasterboard, that's also handy, not just for tiles but to dry anything flat. I think it's quite a good a good tip to know. So I hope you found the video helpful. Any questions, let me know, and keep making.